As we come toward the end of the Lenten season, our next major stop is Jerusalem, where this coming Sunday we will celebrate Jesus' entry into the city on Palm Sunday. But before we get there, I thought we might follow Jesus on his way from Galilee to Jerusalem. Now, this is actually a bit tricky because it is not at all clear that the Gospels present us with a strictly chronological account of Jesus' movements. In fact, what is clear is that they are much more concerned with themes than they are with chronology. Still, one thing the Synoptic Gospels share in common is that very near the end of Jesus' life, he sets out from the Galilee and heads resolutely to Jerusalem, where he knows that he has an appointment with destiny. The Gospel of Luke actually says it best when it says, "When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem." I like this description because it gives us a sense of his sense of resolve. This week, then, we'll follow Jesus as he sets out from Galilee and heads to Jerusalem, stopping along the way to hear what he has to say to us as we also head towards Holy Week. We'll let the Gospel of Matthew be our tour guide this week. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional from Monday, March 27th, 2023. As far as we can tell, the vast majority of Jesus' ministry took place in the region around the Sea of Galilee. From his home base in Capernaum, Jesus follows the roads to the various towns in the region, and he crosses the Sea of Galilee by boat several times. But the Gospels linger on the last week of his life in Jerusalem. As much as half the Gospel accounts cover only the last week of his life. So somehow the writers have to get him from his home base in Galilee all the way to Jerusalem. Matthew takes 2 chapters comprising some 64 verses to make this journey. Mark takes 1 chapter, but one that comprises 52 verses. And depending on your reckoning, Luke takes at least 56 verses and as many as 10 chapters to make the journey. Clearly, this transition time is important. Now, a word or two about geography. Whenever you go to Jerusalem, from wherever you are in the world, you go up. Jews call it making aliyah. This doesn't always make sense to us because we're accustomed to using the spatial metaphor of up to talk about going north and down to heading south. But to Jerusalem, always up. Even if you're going from a place with much higher mountains, and even if you're going from north to south. Jesus is going from Galilee in the north to Jerusalem in the south, so he's still going up to Jerusalem. A second word about geography. The most direct and the commonest route from the Galilee to Jerusalem went straight through the mountainous center of the country. There were a couple of alternate routes, one that followed the Jordan River to the east along its winding route to the Dead Sea, and then turning west at Jericho and heading up the mountain. And a second route along the coast to Jaffa, and then up the mountain to Jerusalem. For this trip, Jesus apparently chose the Jordan River route. Now let's listen in on what happens along the way. When Jesus had finished saying these things, he left Galilee and went to the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. Large crowds followed him, and he cured them there. Walking this route would take a minimum of 4 days of brisk walking, and probably more like 5 or 6, if not a whole week. But since there was a crowd that followed him, it may have taken even longer. Now, the chief advantage for Jesus taking this route was that it kept him out of the region of the Samaritans, who were often hostile to Jewish travelers. But that's not what intrigues me here. It is the notation beyond the Jordan. This is a small detail, perhaps not even one worth mentioning, except for this. Several of the most important events in the Bible take place in the crossing of the Jordan from the east to the west. The children of Israel crossed the Jordan on their way to settle in the Promised Land from east to west. The prophet Elijah crosses to the east of the Jordan where he's taken up into heaven, and then his chosen successor Elisha crosses back as he takes up the mantle of prophet in Israel. It's also where John baptizes people, including Jesus. And now Jesus has crossed to the east bank of the Jordan to make his way south. And where will he cross back? Well, the gospel writers don't tell us, and maybe this is a bit of overreach on my part, but he will almost certainly cross back over at or near the place where he himself was baptized, where the children of Israel first entered into the promised land, and where the prophet Elisha returns after receiving the mantle of the prophet Elijah. There's just too much tied up with this place not to notice what Jesus is doing. Like a lot of things in Israel, it contains multiple layers of meaning. And one of the layers for us is that Jesus knows exactly what he's doing, where he's going, and what's to come. Tomorrow, Jesus blesses the little children on the way. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.